Hi, I'm Peter J. Ray. Welcome to Adventures in History. Today's topic is the 1928 Cleveland Rosenblums ABL basketball semifinals. Again, the Rosenblums were playing at Public Hall in Cleveland in the ABL, the American Basketball League, and they finished in second place in the Western Division with a record of 22-29, winning percentage of .431, 5 games out of first. In the Eastern Division, the New York Celtics finished in first place with a record of 40-9, winning percentage of .816. Second place, the Philadelphia Warriors, 30-21, 11 games out of first. Third place, the Brooklyn Visitation, 25-26. Fourth place, the Rochester Centrals, 24-28. And in the Western Division, the first place team was the Fort Wayne Hoosiers, who were 27-24, winning percentage of .529. Second place, the Cleveland Rosenblums, 22-29. Third place, the Detroit Cardinals, 5-13. And in fourth place, the Chicago Bruins, 13-36, winning percentage of .265, 13 games out of the season. Now, during the season, on January 2nd, the Washington Palace 5 transferred to Brooklyn with a 7-16 record and became the Brooklyn Visitation. The Detroit Cardinals dropped out of the ABL on January 3rd, 1928. In the Eastern Division, the semifinals, 4 teams made the playoffs, the first and second place teams in each division. So they started out right. The first round was the semifinals. And in the semifinals in the East, the New York Celtics defeated the Philadelphia Warriors 2-0. In the Western Division, the semifinals, the Fort Wayne Hoosiers defeated the Cleveland Rosenblums 2-0. And in that series, Game 1 was in Cleveland, Game 2 was in Fort Wayne, Indiana. In the championship series, the New York Celtics defeated the Fort Wayne Hoosiers 3-1 to be champions of the ABL for 1928. Attendance dropped in the ABL that season. There were one-sided races, tough play, a jump ball after every score. A new rule was disqualification via personal fouls. If you had 5 fouls, you were out. That was a new rule. And in 1928, this was the New York Celtics' last hurrah. The team was broken up after the season. Now again, the Cleveland Rosenblums owner was Max Rosenblum. The team was named after him, and he was the Cleveland Rosenblums owner from 1925 to 1930. Max Rosenblum. Dave Kerr was the player coach. He was a guard forward. Dave Kerr was a player for the Cleveland Rosenblums from 1925 to 1930, and he was a coach from 1928 to 1930. During the season, he played in 42 games, scored 71 points for an average of 1.7 points per game. Dave Kerr. Nat Hickey was a forward guard. Hickey was with the Cleveland Rosenblums from 1925 to 1929. During the season, he played in 47 games, scored 379 points, and for an average of 8.1 points per game. Nat Hickey. Cookie Cunningham was a forward center. Cunningham played for the Cleveland Rosenblums from 1926 to 1928, and then from 1929 to 1930. During this season, he played in 41 games, scored 125 points for 3 points per game. Cookie Cunningham. Rich Dean was the center. Dean was with Cleveland from 1925 to 1929. During the season, he played in 44 games, scored 130 points, 3.0 points per game. Rich Dean. Carl Husta was a guard. Husta was with the Cleveland Rosenblums from 1925 to 1930. During the season, he played in 41 games, scored 319 points, 7.8 points per game. Carl Husta. Vic Hansen was a guard forward. Hansen played football, basketball, and baseball for Syracuse University in the 1920s and was team captain for all 3 sports. He was a Helms Foundation Basketball All-Star and All-American in 1925, 1926, and 1927. He was the Helms Foundation College Player of the Year in 1927. In the fall of 1927, Hansen signed to play pro basketball with the Cleveland Rosenblums. After a squabble about money with the Rosenblums manager, Nig Rose, Hansen abruptly quit the team mid-season and returned to Syracuse to play for a local team, the All-Americans. Hansen was a headliner for the All-Americans, a popular attraction in the independent basketball circuit. For 3 seasons, he was the Hansen head football coach. His alma mater, he was the head football coach at his alma mater, Syracuse University, from 1930 to 1936, and had a record of 33-21-5. Hansen is the only player inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame and the College Football Hall of Fame. He was born in 1903, died in 1982 at age 78. His hometown was Syracuse, New York. In 1928, he got in 22 games, scored 136 points, 6.2 points per game. His college average was 13.5 points per game and 14.1 and 14.6 points per game during his 3 seasons. He was 24 years old during this season. He was 5'10", 170 pounds. He had 1 year of minor league baseball in the New York Yankees system. Vic Hansen. Red Skurnick was back. Skurnick played for Cleveland from 1926 to 1930. During this season, he played in 32 games, scored 58 points, 1.8 points per game. Red Skurnick. Buddy Bushman was a guard. He was 6'1", 170 pounds, did not go to college. His given name was Adolph Anthony Joseph Bushman Jr. He was born in 1902, died in 1961 at age 58. His hometown was Far Rockaway, New York. He played pro basketball from 1920 to 1928 for Far Rockaway, the New York Celtics, St. Aloysius Catholic Club, the Washington Palace 5, Brooklyn Arcadians, Baltimore Orioles, Detroit Cardinals, and Cleveland Rosenblums. Bushman played in 97 pro games, or major league games during his career, scored 402 points, 4.1 points per game. He started the 28th season with Detroit and was acquired by Cleveland mid-season. For Cleveland, he played in 15 games, 49 points, 3.3 points per game. Buddy Bushman. Elmer Ripley was a guard. Ripley was 36, 5'8", 170 pounds. He went to college at Brown. He was acquired from Washington. He got in 13 games, scored 48 points and 3.7 points per game. Ripley began playing basketball as a teenager at Curtis High School in Staten Island, New York. He remained active as a player or coach for 66 years. He began his pro career playing for the independent teams around New York City. He was an outstanding defensive player, capable scorer when needed. Some of his best years were in the Pennsylvania State League. He led 2 different teams to championships, Carbondale in 1916 and Scranton in 1921. Ripley played briefly for the famed original Celtics in the early 1920s. In 1925, he joined Brooklyn in the ABL and was a key player when the team won the first place in the season. Ripley was had one of the longest, most varied coaching careers in college basketball history. While still active as a player, his first coaching job was Wagner University from 1922 to 1925. In 1927, he started his first of 3 stints as the basketball coach at Georgetown University. 1927 and 1929, he left with a 24-6 record. He coached Yale for 6 seasons, 1929 to 1935. His record was 82-50. In 39, he returned to Georgetown and was 69-39 over 4 seasons, from 1939 to 1943. In World War II, he had a brief stop at Columbia University, where he went 16-19 in 2 seasons, and then Notre Dame from 43 to 45, where he went 17-4. And then from 1945 to 1946, Ripley returned to Georgetown for the 3rd time, and then 46 to 49, but had a disappointing record, 46-49 in 3 seasons. He finished his college coaching 2 years from 1949 to 1951 at John Carroll University. He had a record of 11-32. He coached at West Point from 1951 to 1952, a 19-17 record. In 1956, he coached the Israeli Olympic basketball team. In 1970, he coached the Canada Olympic basketball team. In 1973, he was inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame. He was born in 1891 and died in 1982 at age 90. His pro basketball playing career was from 1913 to 1929 with the Newark National Turners, the Scranton Miners, Germantown Geraniums, New York Bruggy All-Stars, Coatesville Coats, Brooklyn Dodgers, East Hampton Hampers, the Ware Wonders, Elizabeth, New Jersey, the Cohosiers, Albany Senators, Brooklyn Nonpareils, Patterson Legionnaires, Shanahan in West Philadelphia, the Cleveland Rosenblums, Fort Wayne Knights of Columbus, the Canton Oscars, the New York Celtics, the Brooklyn Arcadians, Washington Palace 5, Carbondale, and the Fort Wayne Hoosiers. As a Major League player, he got in 483 games, scored 2,550 points for an average of 5.3 points per game. He is considered one of the greatest basketball coaches of the 20th century. He was voted one of the 10 best pro basketball players from 1909 to 1926. In 1943, with the Georgetown Hoyas, he got to the NCAA Tournament Championship game. He coached the Harlem Globetrotters from 1953 to 1956. Elmer Ripley. Soup Campbell was a forward and guard. He was 30 years old, 5'9", 160 pounds, did not go to college. He was acquired from Detroit, played in 12 games, 42 points, 3.5 points per game. Soup Campbell was one of basketball's top offensive stars in the early 1970s. A fine set shooter, he had speed, agility. They were keys to his game. He was considered one of the best two-handed dribblers of the era. His greatest success was early in his pro basketball career. His first full pro season, he led the Camden Skeeters to the Eastern League Championship and was the league's leading scorer. He won 2 more EBL titles in 1922 and 1923. He started in the Metropolitan League for 3 seasons before joining the ABL in 1925. He played for 5 ABL teams over the next 4 seasons. In his later years of his career, he was no longer a top scorer, but a valuable floor leader and strategist. He was born in 1897 and died in 1942 at age 45. His hometown was Homestead, Pennsylvania. Soup Campbell's pro basketball career was from 1914 to 1933. He played for the Homestead Shippers, the Tower City, Pennsylvania team, Pitcairn, the Wimmerding Airbrakes, Camden Skeeters, Nanticoke Nans, East Hampton Hampers, Brooklyn Pros, Yonkers Chippewas, Cohosiers, Tri-Council in Philadelphia, the Trenton Royal Bengals, Kingston Shirtmakers, Pottsville Big Five, the Pasadena Colonials, the Hazeltown Professionals, the Pottsville Miners, the Perth Amboy Amboyans, the Chicago Bruins, Philadelphia Quakers, Detroit Cardinals, Cleveland Rosenblums, for Salem Millville, for the Philadelphia Y-Pen. His major league totals, he played in 464 games, 3,021 points, 6.5 points per game. Soup Campbell. Pug Mahoney was a forward guard. He was 18 years old, 180 pounds. He did not go to college. He got in 3 games, scored 16 points, 5.3 points per game. Pug Mahoney was born in 1909 and died in 1963 at age 54. His hometown was Erie, Pennsylvania. He played pro basketball from 1927 to 1933 with the Erie Hammer Mills, Cleveland Rosenblums, Corey Keystones, Erie Claire Jewelers, Buffalo Bisons, Buffalo Lincolns, Cleveland Favorite Knits, House of David. His major league totals, 5 games, 18 points, 3.6 points per game. Pug Mahoney. Joey Sheehan was a guard forward. He was 22 years old, 5'11", 175 pounds. He went to college at Villanova and graduated in 1927. During the season, he got in 19 games, scored 15 points, 0.8 points per game. Joey Sheehan was born in 1905, died in 1978 at age 73. His hometown was Camden, New Jersey. He played pro basketball from 1924 to 1934 for Philadelphia Holy Name, Camden the Skeeters, Cleveland Rosenblums, Pattison, Millville, Hazleton, Pattison, Kennett Square, Archbala, the Wilmington Cardinals, Bridgeton Gems, Philadelphia Jaspers, Patterson Continentals, and the Philadelphia Moose. His major league total is 70 games, 328 points, 4.7 points per game. Joey Sheehan. Whitey Littell was a forward guard. He was 23 years old, 5'10", 160 pounds. He did not go to college. He got in 2 games, scored 6 points, 3 points per game average. He was born in 1904 and died in 1982 at age 77. His hometown was Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania, also the hometown of NFL quarterback Joe Namath. He played pro basketball from 1923 to 1930 with the Darrington AA, Beaver Falls Corks, Pittsburgh Mories, McKeesport Cyclers, Cleveland Rosenblums, Butler Amcos, and Homestead. His major league totals, 22 games, 107 points, 4.9 points per game. Whitey Littell. Eddie Leon was a center. He was 35 years old, 6'2", 190 pounds. He went to college at Washington and Jefferson. He got in 1 game, scored 5 points per game. He was a product of the basketball program set up at the Homestead, Pennsylvania YMCA by the famed early pro star Sandy Shields. Eddie Dolan played basketball his freshman year of college. In 1911, he dropped out of college and signed a pro contract with the Charleroi team in the Central Basketball League. At age 19, he quickly adapted to the pro game under the tutelage of veterans Jackie Adams and Jimmy Brown. He left after the CBL collapsed before the 1912-1913 season. Dolan and his teammates signed with Camden in the EBL. The next 8.5 years he was with Camden, and Dolan won the adulation of New Jersey fans with his selfless, hustling style of play. He moved well. He was a good defender and fine shooter. He passed and shot with both arms over his head. After the designated foul shooter was dropped in 1917, Dolan became the top scorer in the EBL. Dolan played 5.5 more seasons after the demise of Camden. In 1923, he had a couple of token appearances in the ABL, 2.5 years in the minors. He retired in 1928 after 18 pro seasons. He was born in 1892, died in 1970 at age 77. His hometown was Homestead, Pennsylvania. He played pro basketball from 1910 to 1928 for Homestead, Charleroi, the Camden Alphos, Camden Skeeters, Wilmerding, the Wilmerding Airbrakes, Plymouth Shawnees, Brooklyn Dodgers, Philadelphia St. Henry, the Kingston Shirtmakers, Trenton Royal Bells, Camden Atlantics, Holy Name in Philadelphia, for West Philadelphia, Shanahan, the Tri-Council in Philadelphia, Wildwood, the Cleveland Rosenblums. His major league totals, 462 games, 2,324 points, 5.0 points per game. Eddie Dolan. Now, in the postseason, the Western semifinals, Fort Wayne Hoosiers against the Cleveland Rosenblums. Game 1 was in Cleveland. Fort Wayne won 22-14. Game 2 was in Fort Wayne, and the Hoosiers won that game 31-24 for the sweep. The scoring ace was Benny Borgman for Fort Wayne. In the ABL Championship Series, the New York Celtics won that 3-1 against Fort Wayne. The game scores were 30-21, 28-21, 35-18, and 27-26. Games 1, 2, and 3 were in Fort Wayne, and Game 4 was in New York. The New York coach was Johnny Whitty, and the players on that team for the New York Celtics were Davy Banks, Pete Barry, Dutch Dennard, Joe Dreyfus, Nat Holm, Joe Lapchick, and Chris Leonard. Well, that concludes today's presentation. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. God bless you. Take care, and I'll see you next time.